Can I take your order, please?
McDonald's, McDonald's, Kentucky Fried Chicken and a Pizza Hut. McDonald's, McDonald's, Kentucky Fried Chicken and a Pizza Hut.
London has a love-hate relationship with fast food. Public health campaigns and celebrity chefs vilify it. They warn us it's just rubbish. It makes us fat. It kills our kids. Yet, we've never had it so good.
I don't accept the term junk food. That's completely meaningless. Food is either nutritious or tasty, or it's just not food.
In the past few decades, London has been hit by an explosion of innovative, flavorsome, and convenient food. Nowadays, it's available everywhere and to everyone at all price ranges. The sheer variety is astounding.
Today I had a hoisin duck wrap for lunch.
I had bangers and mash, sausages and mashed potatoes with peas and beans.
I'm having sandwiches from Bray, mayo cheddar and pickle.
I quite like burritos.
We went to Burger King.
Got me a bit of egg fried rice, a bit of chili chicken, a bit of spicy beef as well.
I had pasta with red pesto, parmigiano, followed by a hippie shake from Giraffe.
I haven't actually bought my lunch today. I'm on the lookout, see what takes my fancy.
Fast food is essentially a ready meal. It is pre-prepared or requires minimal preparation, is relatively inexpensive, and is often to be eaten outside of where it was purchased.
You've got your fast foods like your KFCs and your McDonald's and things like that, but then you've also got your Chinese, your Indians, or you've got your little cafes such as that over there, which give you a little variety of everything. And so I think the whole market is pretty much covered.
It's fast, it's quick, and we want a time constraint with lunch, so yeah, and it's quite cheap.
We're just spoilt for choice, I think. There's great food here.
But there are still some people who remember when lunch in London wasn't quite so exciting.
I used to live here in 1976, and I don't remember there being much choice apart from the Greasy Spoon type cafe.
I worked here originally about 20 years ago and then came back about 4 years ago. And what's remarkable, this development where we are is new within that time. And there was no options at all, say, 20 years ago. And now it's just extraordinary how it's developed in that time scale.
So how did London fall in love with fast food? When World War II rationing ended, food became attractive and available again. In the 1950s and 60s, we went on lots of cheap package holidays and rendezvoused with exciting new cuisines. Immigrants opened restaurants and takeaways to sate our burning desire for their food.
There's always been choice in London. Even from the 1950s, from when the Italians moved in and started bringing Italian food over, there's always been a wide variety of choice, but nowadays people want it on their doorstep, and people are now no longer willing to go look for it. They expect it to be available to them at all points.
And then came the self-service supermarkets. Food politics scholar Rob Lyons investigates how supermarkets forever changed our relationship with fast food.
In the past, so for example in Victorian times or in the early 20th century, people would have gone from shop to shop locally to buy all the things that they needed for the day. So for example, they would have gone to the baker, the butcher and so on, and been served by the baker and the butcher and the greengrocer by hand and having to deal with them item by item. That was a very long, time-consuming process, and because those shops were small, the range that was available was small, and also they were relatively expensive. So what's happened with the rise of the supermarkets, and the first Tesco supermarket in Britain was in 1954, is we've got bigger and bigger shops over a period of time, and that's enabled us to have a much broader range, less labour intensive because we serve ourselves, and that has enabled in turn cheaper food prices, greater convenience, and a greater range for working class communities in particular.
But just like fast food, some people love supermarkets and others snub them. What are some of the biggest myths surrounding Tesco and its mega chain cousins? Myth number 1. Supermarkets mostly sell unhealthy junk food items.
I did a pop quiz of some of my friends recently. I asked them what's the one food that they would consider to be junk food, and they said pot noodle. But actually, when you look at the ingredients in pot noodle, you can see that it's got a decent amount of protein, carbohydrate and fat, all important things that we need to survive. A lot of other things that we talk about as junk food aren't really junk food either. Another classic example is tomato ketchup. Now, most people think of it as just this product you bung on your food and it's not very good for you. But actually, tomato ketchup is essentially lots and lots of concentrated tomatoes with a little bit of salt, sugar and vinegar. And actually, because of that, it's quite nutritious. It contains a reasonable amount of vitamin C, a reasonable amount of vitamin A. And in many ways, it's more nutritious than, for example, apples. So actually, if you were to choose the junk food between apples or tomato ketchup, actually, in many ways, apples are the junk food.
Myth number 2. Supermarkets rely on evil mass production.
One of the dirty words used in food these days is mass-produced, as if that was a bad thing. In fact, I think it's something worth celebrating. So at all sorts of levels, what we're seeing is innovation that's allowed ordinary people to have access to food in a way that wasn't possible before. So, for example, down on the farm, back in the 1920s, we had the development of artificial fertilisers. That meant that, for the first time, we didn't have to find natural fertilisers from manure or from guano, which is like desiccated bird poo that they used to bring back from South America to fertilise our fields. Now we had artificial fertilisers, and as a result of that, food production skyrocketed. We were able to produce far more food than we could in the past, and that brought prices down, and it made more food available to a growing population. But then when we look at things like preservation techniques, when we do our weekly shop, we now have food that arrives in cans, it's refrigerated, it's frozen, it's sealed in plastic packages that allows it to last for days. In the past, food shopping really was pretty much a daily thing because food just didn't last. So all those food innovations have allowed us much greater convenience at a lower cost than we paid in the past. People are very snobby about pot noodles and other kinds of processed foods. Over here we have jarred sauces, we have Provençal sea salt, we have our marinated artichokes, but they're all processed foods, they're mass-produced foods. Maybe on a smaller scale than the pot noodle, but it is mass-produced food as well. And these things, again, are available to us in supermarkets because of the scale on which they can be produced. And that's a real step forward. That gives us the variety that we never had before.
Myth number 3. Supermarkets make us fat and lazy.
Another charge that's laid at supermarkets very often is that by making the process of obtaining and cooking food easier, that somehow they're responsible for the apparent epidemic of obesity. But there's no reason why making your food easier to obtain and cheaper should lead to a rise in obesity. There's a very nice piece by Jane Furley-Whittingstall. It's Hugh Furley-Whittingstall's mother. And in a book she wrote recently called Ministry of War, which is about rationing during the Second World War, she describes the experience for women, and it is women, of shopping on a daily basis, queuing for hours, one time after another, the grocer, then the baker, then the butcher, then the greengrocer, and then so on and so forth. Now, people can do their entire weekly shop in 1 hour, put it all into the car and drive home again, or even better still, get the supermarket to deliver it to them. That's an enormous boost in terms of convenience, which means that has allowed women to enter the workforce in much greater numbers than before. They don't need to stay at home and be housewives. They can go out and earn a living. Part of the liberation of women, the freedom that they have, is because of supermarkets and industrial food and convenience food. Today it's not really acceptable to talk about people on the basis of class, or some people are inferior to other people in the way that it was in the past. So what happens is we have these discussions by other means, and one of the other means is through discussing the foods that people eat. So the right kind of people, people who understand these things, people who are ethical, they eat organic, local, ethically produced foods that are fair trade, whereas the wrong kind of people, working class or trash people, eat trash food, they eat junk food, and so they eat pot noodles and crisps and drink sugary sodas and so on and so forth. And so those moral distinctions or class distinctions are made through food.
And so it seems that the only thing we have to fear about fast food is not being able to decide what to eat for lunch.
London caters to everything. London caters to all types of food, all types of people, and London's a great place to come and eat.
Around here there is so much, and that is why I'm struggling to find what I want, because there's so much to choose from.